But Ebola is quite well understood, and I'm going to take you back to 1976 in DRC and show you this picture of the Yambuku Mission Hospital. Yambuku is a small outpost in the northern part in the Equator state of former Zaire, above the Congo River. Kinshasa is to the south. As you go up, you come to the Congo River. If you go north of Kinshasa, it's up above the Congo River. And it's in tropical rainforest, and this is a mission hospital that is still run by Belgian religious order, Catholic religious order. And what you see in the forefront of this picture is a long building, which is the hospital with a round area around it, and the two buildings together make the hospital. So this is Yambuku in 1976, and this is the sisters, the nurses at that mission hospital, Belgian sisters, and there's a picture of the maternity ward at that hospital. The sisters are on a river in a dugout canoe. Does anybody know the name of that river? Yeah, it's Ebola. It's the Ebola River. And that's what the Ebola virus was named after, the Ebola River. What you can see is the hospital register, and you can see patient number 2355, who had a nosebleed, epistaxis, and dysentery. This was actually the headmaster of the school, and he came into the clinic, the outpatient clinic, with these signs and symptoms, and he was treated for malaria because that's what they thought he had, and he was given an injection in that clinic. When he was in the outpatient clinic, this is the equipment that was available: 4 needles and syringes, and they weren't sterilized between use, which is quite bad in a hospital run by European missionaries, but they weren't sterilized between use. And in addition, they were in such short supply that they went into the maternity when there was a delivery. So this outbreak, typical of all beginning outbreaks of Ebola, got into a hospital where hospital practices were not as they should be. Transmission was amplified, passage from person to person, because of non-sterilized needles, but in addition, it went into the maternity. So most of the cases were women who were pregnant, the ones that were injected, and then the health workers got infected. The hospital was closed on the 19th of October, and the outbreak stopped soon after that. A feliform virus, and this was quite an unusual virus because, do you know the usual shape of viruses that infect humans? Round. They're usually round or oblong, but roundish. And here was this long virus, and it was determined that this was very similar to another virus which had just been identified, which was called the Marburg virus. But this is what was seen under the microscope. So there's 3 pathways that you can think of: the dead end, which is like rabies; the small amount of transmission, which is like H5N1, or bird flu; and then the endemic diseases. In fact, most diseases that we have today, whether it's tuberculosis or whatever else, they've all been at one point an emergence, and they've gotten into humans, and then they've established residence in humans, and they continue, and they become endemic. So most infections that we have, the human race wasn't born with that or didn't develop with that. They came in from animals, whether it was smallpox or measles or whatever. So that's a little bit about emerging infections. And Ebola is an emerging infection. And which type is it? Is it type 1, that dead end, type 2, a bit of transmission, or type 3 becomes endemic? 3? Well, in the past, it's been 2. It's come, it's been contained, and then it goes. And I expect it will be the same this time. And there's one reason that would happen. Why is that it wouldn't become an endemic disease?
Because people who have it died.
Yeah, they die before they can transmit it many times, or they transmit it to 1 or 2 people. But that's not saying that the virus couldn't mutate in such a way as to become less lethal and then transmit easier or transmit the same in humans but be less lethal like HIV in its early phase, and theoretically it could become endemic, although it's highly unlikely, I believe, with Ebola. It's transmitted by close contact with a patient. That means that you're exposed to the patient's blood, vomit, diarrhea, whatever is being excreted, and also internal, if you touch any body, and sweat is not known, but I certainly would be very careful. Anybody who's sick with Ebola, you should not touch. But if you stay away from that person, and normally you would want to stay out of the wards where these patients are in such agonal state, you have no worries. But one thing is clear, that viruses don't change the means of their transmission, at least in the past they haven't. So there's very little risk, if any, that this would become respiratory transmission, because Ebola is not transmitted through the air, and it's very unlikely that it could mutate in such a way that it would begin to transmit in air. Think of the infections that we have now, the blood-borne infections like hepatitis B. That's never become respiratory. HIV has never become respiratory, and they won't be. They're transmitted in the same way as is Ebola, by body secretions, by blood. The first thing in stopping an outbreak is to isolate patients and protect health workers. Second is to trace contacts of all known patients. Make sure you find them all, and when you do find them, then you take their temperature twice a day for 3 weeks, and if they get a temperature, you diagnose what they have. If it's Ebola, they have to go into isolation. And then the third is helping the communities understand how to protect themselves, and that includes having the Red Cross and others set up burial, transport, and safe transport of patients so that families don't get infected. Those are the 3 steps in containing an outbreak, and all outbreaks prior to this one, and there have been over 25, have all been contained using those 3 steps, but they've been contained when they were in a rural area where community organization is excellent, because there are village chiefs, there are village elders, there's a common language, everybody can work together, and you can work through village leaders to stop the outbreaks. Now it's gotten into urban areas where there are huge mixtures of populations, many different ethnic groups living together, no real unifying factors except governments that they don't trust, and so these outbreaks have become very, very difficult to stop, but they can stop with the same 3 principles.
My understanding is that when you talk to somebody, and it's happened to all of us,
Yeah.
sometimes you actually visibly see a bit of spit, but when we're talking, we're all spitting all of the time at a level that's invisible to the eye, and that will travel 4 to 6 feet.
Except that the virus is so heavy that it doesn't get into those small droplets.
Right.
It's a very heavy, you see it's a big, I mean it's a huge virus, and it's too heavy to get into the aerosol. But if you sneeze,
Yes,
that's different, and if it goes in somebody's eyes or nose or mouth, that's an infection.
Because inadvertently we quite often touch our eyes and...
That's right, with your hands. That's how respiratory infections are transmitted, flu.
While the virus is in its incubation period, can it be transmitted?
It's not thought that it can be transmitted in any way but blood transfusion. So it may be in the blood in small doses and it would come out, but it doesn't appear that it's in body secretions until signs and symptoms.
So signs and symptoms, then that's then possible to pass that on to
That means a fever. If you have a fever, you're infectious.
Protecting people when they go on an assignment such as covering Ebola is an issue that's very close to our heart at the Fleet Street Clinic. We see this all the time, and it may be Ebola, it may be a war, it may be a natural disaster, but the general principle is the same. You can't start thinking about protecting your health for that kind of assignment only when the assignment actually appears, only when the destination is known. You have to begin doing the work some considerable time ahead. it's very important that what you do if you go on an assignment, if you're sending people on assignment, what you do when you get there is designed to mitigate any kind of exposure. It shouldn't, we're going to consider later all the biohazard precautions that can be taken, the protective equipment that can be used. But the first thing is to limit the extent to which that kind of protection is necessary, keeping a distance, not putting yourself in the worst conditions of transmission. Do you really need pictures from inside the hospital, from inside the, do you need that close level of penetration into an environment that's potentially going to put your people at high risk? There are all kinds of techniques that can be used to distance yourself from that. Long lenses, sound technology, whatever it might be. The first step isn't to put on a suit, and there's a limit to how much time you can spend going around dressed up in a suit. But just tailoring the kind of coverage you're going to undertake with that kind of risk mitigation in mind. The general approach to hygiene, hand washing, frequent hand washing, use of alcohol gel, just careful precautions along those lines are really important as well. Avoiding, I was talking to last night to somebody from MSF, and handshaking has all but been abandoned. It's now elbow touching, or as they say in Sierra Leone, Ebola. Initially with this situation with Ebola, there was this sort of view that this was something that was going to burn itself out quite quickly, and I think that the world probably took a bit of a while for the penny to truly drop and for everybody to realize how serious the situation was. I think what follows from that is that it's going to be with us for really a long time. It's not a case of a few weeks, and it's not a case of a few months. So I think if there is going to be coverage of it, this is something that doesn't have to be done yesterday or tomorrow. It can be thought through in cold blood and planned carefully so that it's done without putting people at undue risk.
ABC, avoid body contact. All right? If you remember nothing else, ABC, avoid body contact, because that is really, we're looking at body fluids transmission. In the region, the culture is if a person dies, all members of the family will say goodbye by touching the chest of the person. Now, if that's the case and the person has had Ebola, it could be something else, right away you have a hand which, if you touch your eye, any orifice of the body where there is moisture, that would be an inroad. First thing is, roll your sock down to your ankle as close as you can, and then put it over your trouser leg. Okay. If you put a coverall, if you put a coverall on top of another coverall, so trouser and another trouser, this trouser ends up somewhere up here, and if you're wearing welly boots, it usually ends up on the outside of the boot rather than inside the boot. So this way it makes sure it stays inside the boot, and it's making sure that trouser stays in that place. So on the back of every bag, there's a height and chest measurement. That is standard to all products. Everybody should have a height and chest measurement. So you have a coverall here now, and you're going to put it on. First thing you would do is check the size of the garment. The bag said it was large, but is it actually large? So you'll find that on the neck of all manufacturers will have a size inside the garment. The other thing is that in Africa, white suit is the bringer of death in some tribes, in some regions. They think you are bringing death or that you are a ghost. So we have no white suits going into Africa just now. And this is what we're getting fed back. And this is why we've went and put a green one. That blue one that he's got there, the blue and white, that's the exact same garment but in green. Just to get away from the issue of colour. But this one doesn't have the socks. It's slightly bigger, but just for the effective demonstration. So what happens here now with the sock, the overshoe, it will then protect any contamination from the footwear inside the suit, and it would then go down. And it also slides easily. Right, stand up. Good, good one there. If you have sharp objects, like pens, knives, or anything like that kind of carry on, you would remove them. Some people will remove a watch. You do that for the contamination of the. Just a bit there. Okay. So what's the next thing he puts on? Well, what about his right foot? So so you swing around this way, so you don't want to contaminate that sheet. And if you have your rubber boots, your Wellington boots, you would then be putting both on. Now, if you have boots on, rubber boots, what you would then be doing, the Wellington would come up to here. What you would then do is take that up to the top, and then that would go over the outside of the rubber boot. Okay? Because lacing boots will allow ingress if it's dust or liquid. If you don't have what's called a bellow tongue that's actually sewn in, you would get ingress there, and then you would also have ingress here. So if the guys are wearing desert boots, which are higher, or the military type lacing boots, you might get away with it. But in normal application, we would expect a lightweight boot. I'm just showing the two different ones, right? So with or without, you could do it with an overshoe or without an overshoe. So you have a mask, and the mask has a strap. Some masks have two straps, and what you do is if you put them on the outside of the hood, when you come to undress, you have to take it off before you actually get the coverall off. And if you've any contamination or anything left on the residual on the outside, you're actually exposing yourself to a microclimate of anything that was in that working environment. So the mask is one of the last things you should be looking to take off. It's over the head with that, and it opens.
Tuck your chin in.
It goes in there, your chin goes into that space there. Okay. And what will be next? What you're looking for is goggles that wrap round the face as close as it can. One, it gives a better fit and better peripheral vision, but also it seals better around the hood. And what you want to make sure is that the mask and the goggle actually fit together. There's no gap. It's not lifting away from the face. And then you have the straps that you can adjust if required to make it that bit tighter. Does that feel okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Fine. And then what you would then put the hood up. Okay, and under the chin. Now if you lift your chin up and then pull the zip right up, right, that's it, fine. And, okay, good. Okay. Oh, and if you just stand up for me just a second. Now, if you've got a buddy who can help you, this is when the buddy gets involved. And what you would be looking at is this has got an adhesive strip all the way down. And what we're wanting to do is seal over the zip area we're taking that down. If you lift your chin up for me, I'm just pulling that down there. Excuse me, do you want to finish off the last bit there at the bottom?
Not really.
Right, and this part has an adhesive flap on it. You would put this partially onto the mask and partially onto the coverall, because I can see a little bit of beard still here at the side. If I do that,
Wax it off.
yeah, he's now sealed. If he was lifting his head up or he was crawling and he had to lift his head up, that area has now been sealed off. Yeah? Feel all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You would either look at single gloving or double gloving. We've found double gloving to be the safest. MSF are double gloving all their crew out there. And again, if you can hand in there. Excellent.
Also, if you double glove, you need to change the top glove as well, makes it a lot easier for hamsters as well.
If you damage the outer glove, you can still be protected and do that. There is also a thumb loop on the garment. If you were to overstretch without the thumb loop, you could, if the glove is not long enough, expose skin here. If you do it this way with the thumb loop, you start to pull that stretch, you know that you're getting to the limit and you should be thinking about not doing it any further. Can I get the other hand, please? The other hand. So I just as the thumb's all twisted, that's what it is. You'll find that thumb's going a bit. Do you want to push? Push it.
Going back to what I was saying about when changing, you have to tape the bottom gloves to your suit.
Some applications, people will tape the glove at the wrist to the bottom glove. Depends on your risk environment. In the medical application, they don't tape at all. You guys do tape. In fact, I think you tape both gloves, don't you?
No.
They just take one?
Bottom.
Depends on what you're
Right.
doing. It's going to be all mucky if I'm low,
Okay. In the nuclear industry, they wear 3 gloves.
We
And the-
correct cotton liner as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about 3 gloves like this and a cotton liner, so they've got 4 gloves. So instead of having all that dexterity, they actually walk a bit like that. And what we're trying to do is keep as light the amount of layers you have here, because the less dexterity. If you're a cameraman, you want to be able to use your camera. How do you use it if you can't move your hands?
What about taping at boot level?
Some people tape. And that's why we can never say, this is the way you do it. You have to.
You have to.
So you have to make sure that the glove has actually got a chlorinated finish or a powder inside the garment. And you can actually feel air trapped in between the 2 gloves there.
You can get different gloves for double gloving, specifically for
Yeah.
different.
Not bad, but not very good either. Okay. So what equipment do you take? Do you have a camera? Do you take recording equipment?
We decontaminate all of that and dispose of that in another one.
Okay. Do you want a really expensive way of doing it? Cling film. If you actually wrap, we did this for the nuclear industry. They were going into areas, and they came out and they had to decontaminate airlines and everything else. And we tried to buy from I can't remember the company, but you know the sausage skin. We actually tried to buy that to put over the outside of it. Couldn't do that, so we ended up with cling film, and we found that you can buy that ½ metre wide, wrap it round, and you still had all contact with all the buttons. And when it came to time to take it off, slight cut along the bottom, turned it outside in, and it was away. And your camera was completely clean except for the lens. And that was then, they still give a wipe over the whole surface, but it was really just a just in case rather than contamination. So if you're thinking about equipment you have to use, it may be that you use a cling film. Okay, 2 things you can do. The vehicle you arrived in has a mirror. You can actually look at the mirror and have an idea of everything. But the other thing is you can't check, is this all going to fit properly? So can you go down on one knee for me? All right, and stretch that over your head. Now, if you stretch like this, and if you stand up again, please. The other one is to do is that. Just go down and squat. Right? Now, can you stand up? Speak to me. Right, so you haven't turned it into soprano.
No, not yet.
Right, okay. So the suit wasn't too tight. You didn't rip it out. It means that if you're going to do climbing of ladders, or you're going to have to stretch or move, we know that you're not going to disrupt any of the PPE and that you're going to actually be protected from your working environment. Most water-based bleaches, so whether it be Virkon, Domestos, general heavy-duty household bleaches, will not go through there if it's sprayed on. If I were to rub that down, I then have the possibility of being too heavy and pressing on it and actually pushing something through it. But if you spray on, yeah, so you use either the hand atomizer sprays or you use a pressure bottle like you use in the garden with a fine mist spray. Okay? So you would then have to make sure that you cover from head to toe. What is the critical areas when you spray? These areas are missed. The back of the head, the neck area is missed. And the other area, if you've got somebody contaminated, it's all right with a spray, but if you've got a cloth and you're wiping somebody down, you miss the groin and the backside area. So these are critical. So when you're spraying, the other thing is if you're spraying like that, you're spraying down the way. You have to make sure you spray up into under the arm, and you have to make sure you spray into the crotch area. You don't pull the suit, but I'm just exaggerating the area you've got to clear. So spraying down the way, we've had suits sent to Portendown after the fire brigade said completely decontaminated and found 20% of the surface of the garment was still contaminated after they had done their decontamination. I should have on at least an apron for decommissioning. You're getting hot in there, so we're going to get you out of there. Thank you for the time you're standing there. And what we would be doing is the decontamination, once it's decontaminated, you're looking to have it turned out like a banana. You're peeling it off and you're turning it away from the body. So the first thing is taking now, I could have now got some contamination from doing that. It could have been residual, or I didn't clean that area there correctly. If I've got to get my hand now to that zip, if I were to put my hand up there, I've now got the chance of actually touching skin underneath there. So if I get this side, just so you can see, pull the garment there, and it should then pull away from there. From here, keep a hold of that bit, thumb over. You're not going to use the suit again, but don't do what I see a lot of people do, is take the hood and push it back. Because if I pushed it back, anything that was a residual on the top of there, I push the hood back, it's sitting the back of the neck. If you turn it, it's clear. Okay? I'm going to turn around.
Just tell me.
Right. Put your hand behind your back to there. Bring your sleeve round and grab that sleeve there. Pull it down. You grab it again, pull. Right, now come, right, just stop there. Turn around to the front so they can see now. So you've now started to take that sleeve off from the outside with no touch of inside. Yep. Do it one more and try to pull your hand through the sleeve now. Can you pull that arm through? Right? And now, because you're going to throw the suit away, the outer glove if you can trap it here, you'll actually take the glove and leave it inside the sleeve. Did you get that's right? Did we get the second sleeve with the glove? No, we haven't. Right, we'll just stop there. What we were trying to do was get that glove to stay inside the sleeve. Now, it so happened that's turned out completely around the other way, so it's clean. But we've now got a clean sleeve, you've got a clean hand. You now use the clean hand to go inside here. So in there, take it down, and again pull the sleeve up, grab the sack cuff then, and take it with it. No, not the last, that one. Yep. That is why you should get a second glove that's bigger than the first glove, not the same size. And that would fold it. You're now pushing it, your hands are clean. Yep. You would push it down all the way. Get to your seat. Just sit this way. Now, if you had rubber boots on, this is not going to work because of you've got lacing boots. But how does he get the boots off without touching them?
The inside of the suit as he rolls it down.
So he's rolled it down there, and what I would do is I'm sitting there, put my boot onto the back of the other boot. I can then pull that foot through. So can you get it? Yeah, okay. Bring your foot up. If it was a rubber boot, that leg would actually stick with the boot. Stand on there. So we've now got a clean foot here. You then use that toe through the fabric, and take the other shoe off.
The laces of
Because you've done the lace, right, so you can't get it. But if that was rubber boots, what you would have done is that would have come off outside the boot, and you would have come out with two socked feet. Yep, you've now got that clean. Turn round to your there. You will have a medical waste bag. You have kit for putting oil in. So you're putting it into a medical waste bag. That's all turned outside in. You've now got your clean hands still. You take the mask off next, and you would take it off by the straps, because the straps are clean. If you bring it forward like that, it would go in there for disposal. The mask. Okay, again there. Now you can then take that, because you can touch the inside of the suit into your West medical bag. You still have the gloves on, and the last thing you would do is peel the gloves outside in, and again that into the bag, and that's them away. I'm not saying that's the exact procedure you use, but what we should be looking for is to try. In no way was he a possible contamination, because everything he was doing was turning everything outside in to keep them clean. And that's really the main thing. And then dispose of the product. Any comments on that?